Good morning. I guess I should start with a word of apology for the English, but I can assure you that if I did it in French, it would be a very short and laughable kind of speech. So, without further ado, let me just jump into subject matters. I've been asked to share with you some of the insights on not only the management of acquisitions, particularly in high-tech sectors, but also the problem of how to develop capabilities, how to learn how to do them in the context of an M&A acquisition program. Those are two key questions that I've been studying for about 30 years. I'll try to synthesize in about 10 or 15 minutes what I've learned, not only with my research, but obviously across the academic sector. So the first, maybe counterintuitive takeaway, if you want, from a long list of research projects is that in acquisitions, in general, this is not only on high tech, acquisitions in general, experience, so how many acquisitions you've done in the past, actually does not have any impact on performance. If you've done 50 of them, or you've done 5 or even 1, the probability of success in the next one, unfortunately, does not differ from from having done very few, okay? So basically learning by doing, in and of itself, is not sufficient to improve the performance of the acquisitions. And that's the bad news. The good news is that there are significant things, important things that you all can do. And some of the obvious things have to do with the creation of a process, of routines, of tools, on how to deal with the most complex part of the acquisition process, due diligence, integration planning, execution, and so on. All of this has been done over the decades. Learning and tools of this sort have been developed, and I'm sure now you can, if you don't have them, or if you have only started, there's plenty of knowledge in the context of consultants, expertise, and so on. All of that is fine when it comes to develop your know-how, right? Process, how to actually deal with the complexities. That's great, but it's not enough, unfortunately. The real distinctive factor, and in fact, of all the factors that we have tested, the one that really distinguishes the successful acquirers from the less successful acquirers is the degree to which the acquiring company has actually developed and refined over time its own theory about what actually makes their own acquisition work and not. So it's about knowing why rather than just knowing how. And that's a lot more difficult to do. And I'm sorry to say that no matter how good your consultants are, it's really your job, right? And that requires essentially that there is a process of capturing, understanding of what happened in the last year. So post-mortem is obviously necessary. But it's the fact that the key learning processes, the key issues, the key lessons are actually embedded over time in your own theory about what should be done with this type of acquisition rather than that. Large versus small, or high quality in certain capabilities versus others. There are a lot of key decisions to be made in terms of how you handle the integration, for instance. How do you retain the key talent, which is fundamental, obviously, for high-tech acquisitions. And only you can really tell the difference and identify the factors, and not only develop this theory, your own theory of M&A performance, but also refine it, adjust it every time you've done one, okay? So that's the first point. I think the second one, and is specific to the high-tech sector and fintech, obviously in particular, is the fact that actually acquisitions in this particular environment are acquisitions, but they need to be managed in a completely different way. They need to be managed as if they are partnerships. Partnership in the sense that in the context of high tech, what you're buying fundamentally is not assets, physical assets, is not even products. You're buying capabilities. And that type of assets is in the head of people that you've hired in one, with one stroke of a pen, right? On your agreement to purchase, you hire many, many people, of which you've done close to 0 interviews, right? Not only that, but those people with the key assets that you're buying walk out of the door in the office every afternoon or evening, and it's not at all sure that they're going to come back the morning after, okay? So retention in this context is actually a lot more important than integration. In fact, integration usually comes in the way, right? And so the key capabilities that need to be developed here have to do with how do you manage human capital, understanding it, assessing, identifying, retaining it, rather than really worrying about the level of integration. And in fact, the level of integration, as I said, it's typically the opposite. It's about preservation. It's about how do you protect the acquired company from all the other, impositions that people in any acquiring company makes, right? Administration, routines, processes, rules, and stuff like that, which clearly increase the probability of your most valuable assets to walk out without coming back in the morning, okay? Now, the other point that I think is really important is that in high-tech environments, even more than in other sectors, acquisition is not only human capital sensitive, they actually are extremely sensitive to social capital. So the success of an acquisition is also about the retention and the leveraging, in fact, multiplying the quality of the relationships that people, again, in the acquired company has developed over the years. And importantly, on the other side of the relationship, right? So understanding, assessing, evaluating, and valuing the relationship with customers, of course, but also suppliers, other partners, employees, even local communities. All of these stakeholders are really the value, right? In addition to the brains of the people that you're hiring, is really the quality of the relationships that are essential. Just to give you one particular example, in a piece of research that we published a few years ago, the degree to which the acquiring company has developed stakeholder related processes, right? They actually have invested in sustainability in terms of environmental and social impacts. That means essentially to be able to speak and engage customers, suppliers, local communities, and investors in the key strategic processes in making decisions, innovations, governance, and so on. That degree of stakeholder orientation in the acquiring company is actually a key success factor in their acquisitions. Obviously, the two things normally have nothing to do with each other. That's not why companies invest in sustainability, right, and in stakeholder integration. But actually, that capability, that mindset, seems to be extremely important in learning how to manage post-acquisitions, especially in high-tech sectors, okay? And actually, building on this, the last point I wanted to share with you has to do really with the role of the CEO of the acquiring company. I'm sure there are quite a few CEOs or C-suite members in this room. The CEO typically has, clearly the leading role in the negotiation and closing phase, right? He signs, or she signs, on the, on the dotted lines at the moment of the agreement to purchase. And then everything is left to the integration managers and the team that will deal with all the various tasks, right, that need to be managed, coordinated to deliver the potential, right, the value creation potential for that particular acquisition. Well, we've done a study with the post-acquisition management practice of McKinsey a few years ago, and it turns out that the degree to which the CEO is actually engaged throughout the process in a meaningful way is really critical. And that has to do with essentially a balancing act that has to happen, especially in fintech acquisitions, between, yes, the integration manager that has to deliver costs, efficiencies, revenue, most importantly, revenue efficiencies, revenue synergies, with the role of the CEO, who can actually be the champion, as I was saying, of the relationship, or the social capital in particular, not just the retention of people, but the retention of the relationships and of the other, the engagement in a fruitful way. Also, going beyond the realization of the synergies that were identified before the acquisition, right? If you leave it only to integration managers, they're going to deliver to you what was identified before signing the contract. And that's great, but typically a lot more of the value is discovered after the acquisition is done. And, but it's discovered if and only if the CEO or the senior executives keep on asking people to look for it, and again, to retain both the human and the social capital. And that delicate balance is absolutely critical for success in these type of acquisitions. They're very different from the norm, but again, the role of the CEO as champion of stakeholders is actually somewhat counterintuitive in a way, but it's really, really important. Let me close here. There's quite a bit more, of course, that we learned over the last 30 years, but these are, I think, the lessons that are particularly important for acquisitions and for the programs of acquisitions in the fintech. Thank you very much.